In order to reach your full potential and apprehend your promise, you must face a few pharaohs, experience pain, loss, and rejection. You are going to get knocked down. Last week's Torah portion, the children of Israel receive Moses. Moses goes, he has the encounter in the burning bush. Remember, God appears to Moses in the burning bush. In Hebrew, it's not actually a bush. It's a very specific type of bush. God appears to Moses in the midst of a burning thorn bush. Why a burning thorn bush? Because God says, I feel your pain. I identify with your suffering. Thorns are connected to exile and pain and suffering and the curse of creation. God is saying, I am with you in your pain. Then Moses goes, and by the way, that's why one of the reasons why Yeshua has a crown of thorns on his head. He's saying, I feel your pain. And then he comes to the children of Israel and he says, God has seen, God has sent me to redeem you. And they bowed down and worshiped. They were overcome because they realized that the Lord has seen their afflictions. I just want to encourage you that whatever it is that you are going through, like the children of Israel, they thought they had been forgotten. God never forgets. He is the God who sees. I want you to say, God sees me. The Lord knows me. God sees me. The Lord knows me. God sees you and he knows everything that you've been through. So God goes to Moses. Moses goes to the people. Moses then goes to Pharaoh. We read about it in this week's Torah portion as well. Pharaoh responds by making the work of the children of Israel even more brutal. It goes from bad to worse, right? He was thinking, man, things are going to get better. No, it gets worse. All right. And this caused the children of Israel to become unresponsive to the message of Moses. The brutality, right? This is what we read, Exodus 6, 9, and 10. So Moses spoke accordingly to the children of Israel, but they did not heed Moshe, that's Moses, because of shortness of breath. Mikotzer ruach, and hard labor, ume avodah kasha. Right, this hard labor and this shortness of breath that the children of Israel experienced. It was like almost impossible. They couldn't believe, they couldn't possibly imagine that they could have a better future. They seems like their future is forgotten. There's no hope. They didn't believe anything could change. It was never going to get better. It was only going to get worse. Listen, there is a false type of faith, and that is fear faith. Fear faith believes the worst possible future imaginable. We can't have fear faith, but it's easy to fall into fear when the pharaohs of our life are pummeling us, are beating us, right? Beating us down. So the children of Israel were being crushed physically and spiritually under the heavy burden that Pharaoh had brought upon them. And they couldn't believe that anything was going to change. It had been that way for so long. Friends, I got to tell you, this is indicative of our generation, the spirit of what we see. That is a spirit, yes, it's doubt, but really it's a spirit of indifference, right? Indifference. Nothing's going to change, right? Nothing's going to change. Things cannot possibly be different. Things can always be different with God, right? So their existence became one of subsistence. They lost faith and hope for a better future. The Jewish mystics understand this kotzer ruach, this shortness of breath, to remain a constriction of spirit. They were constricted in the spirit. And this is the essence of Egypt. This is the essence of exile in general, a constriction that leads to a restriction of faith, hope, and love. Just declare, I will not be constricted and I will not be restricted. God does not want you to be constricted. He does not want you to be restricted. Say, he has more for you, right? So this constriction and restriction caused them to cause them to a place, and instead of thriving, they were just surviving, and all they were doing was focus on their daily needs. They just wanted to survive the day, which is understandable. In the same way, friends, our hardships and the disappointments that we face, that each one of us face, can cause us to focus on what's in front of us and not on our future. Focus on what's in front of us, and thereby losing the ability to see God, the future that God wants to bring, the future that God wants to do. And without vision, the people perish. So when fear, going under hardships and disappointments, you focus on what's in front of you instead of focusing of what's on your future. Say, I am not just going to focus on and in front of me, I'm going to focus on my future. So our problems and our pains can become blinders that restrict our ability to see. Like, I grew up in New York City. I used to love going to Central Park, and I used to, on special occasions, a few times I've taken the horse-drawn carriages, and the horses have blinders on their eyes so they don't see what's on the side of them, so that they don't get scared, that they don't get fearful, and it restricts their line of sight, their ability to see. All they can see is what's in front of them. And so, friends, we got to take the blinders off. Say, I'm taking the blinders off. I'm not going to be restricted in my sight. Faith is the evidence of things hoped for, the substance of things not seen, right? So that's why God had to remove Israel from Egypt. They were literally going blind. They were literally, on a spiritual and metaphorical sense, they were going blind. When you live in your own personal Egypt, the place of harsh restriction and constriction, it causes us severe emotional, spiritual, relational, and physical damage. So we have to cry out to the Lord at times like this and never stop believing in and never stop proclaiming his promises. We have to proclaim the promises of God. We can't lose sight of the future, of what he said. He came that we might have a hope and a future. Not only does Egypt want to rob you of your sight of chazon, of vision, right? You have no vision for what God wants to do. You can't see God in the midst of what it is that's going on in your life. Egypt wants to rob you of your voice. And maybe we'll talk more about this next week, but he wants to rob. Slaves have no voice. That's why when Moses goes to Pharaoh, God tells him, Shlach et ami, let my people go vayaduni, that they might worship me. They needed to worship the Lord. They needed to find their voice again. I just declare over you are going to find your voice in this season. Say, I am going to find my voice. I am making a choice to find my voice. It's time to find your voice. Your voice is not going to be constricted. You're not going to be restricted. So in order for Israel to break free of the restrictiveness of the crushing nature of what they were going through in Egypt, they needed to worship so they could find their voice. Friends, the Lord has not created you for a land of limitation. That's Egypt, but he's bringing you out of the land of limitation into the land of limitlessness, right? I say I am going from being limited to limitless. The promised land is a place of limitlessness, right? It's described as a broad and expansive land. In Egypt, it's strict and restricted, right? There's not enough space, right? You can't move. You're boxed in. There's not room for everyone. But Israel is the opposite. It's broad and expansive. And it's a land that flows with milk and honey. God wants to make you like the land of Israel. Just declare, I'm going from being internally restricted. God is making me broad and expansive on the inside. By the way, that's the difference between David and Goliath. David was small on the outside, but he was broad and expansive in his soul and spirit. Goliath was a giant on the outside, but he was a pygmy spiritually. He had a pygmy soul on the inside. Yes, Katie, the roar of the lion. Yes, Jackie, from limitless to limited to limitless. Yes, to the promised land, Jen. Yes, out of the box. I love it. Yes, gonna find my voice. I love it. Yes, let's make these declarations. Yes, Gail, I love it. I love the milk and honey sign, Betsy. That's awesome. I love your comments. Yes, Aaron, judging us by our hearts. Awesome. The difference between David and Goliath, broad and expansive on the inside. Okay? So, but can you imagine the disappointment Moses faced? First, Israel doesn't respond. Then he gets dissed and dismissed by Pharaoh, laughed at by the leader of Egypt, and loses the trust of the people. Friends, that's a bad day. Moses was having a bad day. Doesn't get much worse than that, right? And your people are suffering. You're trying to help them, and things are getting worse. They're suffering more. God is, Moses is basically like, look, God, come on, I told you this is what was going to happen. Send somebody else. I knew this was going to happen. And what does God basically say to Moses? It's all good. Get up and go do it again. It's all good. Get up and go do it again. I want you to declare with me, it's all good. I am going to get up and I am going to do it again. See, Moses was like, sending a shepherd that stutters, Lord, come on. With only a staff to set the people free, this is not a good idea. But the Lord was teaching Moses and all of us something that was so significant. In order to reach your full potential and apprehend your promise, you must face a few pharaohs, experience pain, loss, and rejection, and overcome some major problems. We've talked about this. You are going to get knocked down. Friends, I've gotten knocked down so many times in my life, so many times in ministry. The enemy has tried to knock me down with a complete knockout, so I'd never get up again. Try to discourage me, try to rob me of everything that he could rob me of. Okay, and I've been knocked down, and it has hurt, and sometimes it hasn't been easy to get up. I'm just being real. But you will get knocked down, but you won't get knocked out if you put your trust in the Lord and keep your focus on him. The Lord promises the righteous fall 7 times and they rise up again. Say, I am going to rise up again. I am going to rise up again. So achieving success to achieve success, it means learning to get up one more time.